We got married yesterday, just for special people. Those 7 words changed everything between my son and me. 7 words that landed like stones in my chest, each one heavier than the last. I remember standing in their doorway that afternoon, holding a box of wedding magazines I'd been collecting for months, my heart full of plans and dreams for my only child's big day. I'd imagined helping choose flowers, picking out a dress, standing beside him as he promised his life to another. Instead, I got a casual announcement delivered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, and my son, my boy, the one I'd raised alone, sacrificed everything for, couldn't even look at me. That moment taught me something I should have known earlier. Sometimes the cruelest betrayals come wrapped in polite words and pleasant tones. Welcome, my dear. This is Grandma Alice Stories, where every tale carries a lesson and every wound carries wisdom. Pull up a chair, pour yourself some tea, and settle in close, because today's story is about what happens when the people you love most forget where they came from. Life has its own way of keeping accounts, child, and the debts we think we've escaped, they always come due. I need to take you back a few years to help you understand how we got here, to that doorway, to those words, to the moment my world shifted on its axis. My son, Jacob, was everything to me. His father left when Jacob was 3, disappeared like smoke on a windy day, leaving nothing but unpaid bills and broken promises. So I became both mother and father, working double shifts at the diner and cleaning offices at night. I wore shoes with holes in them so Jacob could have new sneakers for school. I ate crackers for dinner so he could have hot meals. That's what love looks like, child. It's not always pretty or poetic. Sometimes it's just tired hands and an empty stomach and a smile you paste on so your baby never knows how scared you are. Jacob grew up good despite it all. Respectful, hardworking, grateful for everything I did. When he graduated high school, first in our family to do so, he hugged me so tight and whispered, "Everything I am, Mom, I owe to you." I held those words close to my heart like precious jewels. They sustained me through the lonely years after he moved out for college, through the quiet house that suddenly felt too big with just me in it. Then he met Melissa. Now, I want to be fair here. When Jacob first brought her home, I tried my best to welcome her. She was beautiful, I'll give her that, polished and poised in ways I never was, with perfectly styled hair and clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She came from money, the kind of family where nobody worries about keeping the lights on or choosing between medicine and groceries. Different world entirely from the one Jacob and I came from. At first, I thought that difference didn't matter. Love is love, right? Rich or poor, if 2 people care for each other, they can build something real. That's what I believed, anyway. That's what I hoped. I went out of my way to make Melissa feel like family. When they moved in together, I spent my savings, money I'd been putting aside for my own little emergencies, to buy them a couch and a kitchen table. When they struggled with their first month's rent because Melissa's job hadn't started yet, I covered it without hesitation. When she mentioned wanting new curtains, I made them myself, spending evenings at my old sewing machine even though my arthritis made every stitch painful. "You don't have to do all this, Mom," Jacob said once, watching me wrap up a care package of homemade meals for them. "I want to," I told him, and I meant it. "She's going to be my daughter-in-law someday. Family takes care of family." He smiled at that, but something in his eyes looked uncertain, like he wanted to say more but didn't know how. I should have paid attention to that hesitation. The signs were there, child, if I'd been willing to see them. The way Melissa's smile would thin when I'd show up at their apartment unannounced. The way she'd glance at my worn coat or my practical shoes with something that looked uncomfortably like pity, or was it embarrassment? The way conversations would go quiet when I entered a room, as if they'd been discussing something I wasn't meant to hear. But I pushed those observations aside. I told myself I was being oversensitive, reading too much into small things. After all, I'd raised Jacob to be kind, to value what really mattered. Surely those lessons had stuck. Then came the engagement. Jacob called me on a Tuesday evening, his voice bright with excitement. "Mom," I asked her. Melissa said yes. "We're getting married." My heart soared. "Oh, sweetheart, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Tell me everything." "We're still figuring out the details," he said. But I wanted you to be the first to know. First to know. Those words made me feel included, important, special. I spent the next week collecting bridal magazines, marking pages with ideas, imagining the conversations Melissa and I would have over coffee as we planned together. Mother and daughter, working side by side to create Jacob's perfect day. I should have known better than to let hope make me naive. It was a Saturday afternoon when I drove over to their place, that box of magazines balanced on my hip as I knocked on their door. Melissa answered, and I noticed immediately that she looked different somehow, radiant, glowing with a secret kind of happiness. "Hi, dear," I said, holding up the box. "I brought some wedding magazines. Thought we could look through them together, start planning." "Oh," she interrupted, her smile widening in a way that made my stomach drop without knowing why. "Didn't Jacob tell you?" "Tell me what?" She glanced back into the apartment, and Jacob appeared behind her, his face pale. Something in his expression made my mouth go dry. "We got married yesterday," Melissa said, her voice light and casual, as if she were commenting on the weather. "Just a small ceremony. City Hall. Very intimate, just for special people." The box slipped from my hands. Magazines scattered across their doorstep, glossy pages fluttering in the breeze. I stared at my son, waiting for him to contradict her, to explain that it was a joke, that of course I would have been invited to his wedding. But he just stood there, his eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder, his jaw tight. "You married?" The words came out barely above a whisper. "Yesterday," Melissa confirmed, holding up her left hand where a simple gold band now sat. "Sorry we didn't mention it earlier. It was kind of a spur-of-the-moment thing. Very small guest list. You understand. Just for special people." Those words echoed in my head, bouncing around my skull like trapped birds desperate for escape. I looked at Jacob, my son, my baby boy, the child I'd given everything for, and he still wouldn't meet my eyes. "Jacob," I said, my voice cracking despite my efforts to keep it steady. "You got married without telling me?" "Mom, He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his face made it worse somehow. Not defiance, not anger, but guilt. Weak, squirming guilt. He'd known this would hurt me. He'd done it anyway. It wasn't, we didn't want a big thing. "A big thing?" I repeated. "I'm your mother. I wasn't asking for a big thing. I was asking to be there." Immediate family. The phrase hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. Apparently, I didn't qualify. I bent down slowly, gathering the scattered magazines with trembling hands. My knees cracked as I crouched there on their doorstep, feeling older than I'd ever felt in my life. Behind me, I could hear neighbors coming and going, normal life continuing while mine shattered into pieces at my feet. "Well," I said, standing up with the box clutched to my chest like armor. "Congratulations. I hope you'll be very happy together." "Mom," Jacob started, finally finding his voice. "No, it's fine," I interrupted, forcing my lips into something resembling a smile. "You're right. It's your wedding. Your choice. I just wish someone had told me I wasn't special enough to be included." I turned and walked back to my car, my spine straight even though everything inside me wanted to collapse. I didn't cry, not then. I waited until I was home, until I'd locked my door and drawn my curtains, until I was completely alone. Then I let myself break. That night, I sat in my small kitchen. The same kitchen where I'd packed thousands of lunches for Jacob, where I'd helped him with homework, where I'd held him when he was scared or sad, and I realized something fundamental had shifted. My son had chosen her over me. Not in the way sons naturally separate from their mothers when they grow up and start their own families. That I would have understood, even celebrated. No, this was different. This was erasure. This was being deemed unworthy of witnessing the most important moment of his life. And as I sat there in the growing darkness, one thought kept circling through my mind. What happens now? What I didn't know yet, child, was that life was about to teach both of them a lesson I'd learned long ago. Sometimes the people you think you can use, discard, or dismiss are the very ones you'll need most when the world stops being kind. That lesson was coming. It arrived exactly 1 week later, with a phone call that would change everything. That week after the wedding I wasn't special enough to attend, passed like walking through fog. Everything looked the same but felt different, distorted. I went through my routines mechanically: morning coffee, watering my little garden, evening walks around the neighborhood. But inside, child, I was rewiring myself, rebuilding the part of my heart that had broken on their doorstep. I didn't call Jacob, didn't text, didn't reach out at all. For the first time in 28 years, I gave my son silence instead of unconditional availability. Some might call it petty. I called it self-preservation. You can only extend your hands so many times before you realize the person you're reaching for has already turned away. Tuesday evening, I was sitting in my armchair, the old floral one I'd bought secondhand when Jacob was a baby, working on a crossword puzzle. The lamp beside me cast warm light over the page, and through my window, I could see Mrs. Chen across the street watering her roses in the fading daylight. It was peaceful, ordinary, exactly the kind of moment I'd learned to appreciate after years of chaos and struggle. Then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Melissa? My heart did a strange little jump, half hope, half dread. Maybe she was calling to apologize. Maybe she'd realized how cruel their exclusion had been. Maybe Jacob had finally found his backbone and insisted she make things right. I answered on the third ring. Hello. Did you transfer the rent money? No greeting. No warmth. Just those 6 words, sharp and expectant, like I was a bank she could withdraw from at will. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, genuinely confused for a moment. I'm sorry, what? The rent, Melissa repeated, and I could hear irritation creeping into her voice. It's the 20th. It was due 5 days ago. The landlord is threatening late fees. Did you transfer it or not? Understanding crashed over me like cold water. Of course. Of course this was why she was calling. Not to apologize, not to include me, not to acknowledge my pain. To collect. To take. To treat me like an ATM machine instead of a human being with feelings. For 3 years, 3 full years, I'd been helping them with rent. It started when they first moved in together, when Melissa's job offer got delayed and Jacob's entry-level position barely covered their utilities. Just for a few months, Mom, he'd promised. Just until we get on our feet. Those few months became a year. Then 2. Then 3. And I'd paid it willingly, child, without complaint, because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice. We give. We put our children's needs before our own comfort. I'd been eating cheaper food, skipping my own doctor's appointments, wearing the same tired clothes year after year, all so my son and his girlfriend then fiancé could live in a nice apartment in a good neighborhood. And now, after excluding me from their wedding, after looking me in the eye and calling me not special enough, she was calling with her hand out, expecting me to just keep giving. As if nothing had changed. As if I had no feelings to hurt, no dignity to wound. Something inside me, something that had been bending and bending for years, finally snapped straight. Hello? Are you there? Melissa's voice cut through my thoughts, sharp with impatience. I took a slow breath, feeling strangely calm. Clarity can feel like coldness when you're used to being warm, but it was clarity nonetheless. I'm here. So did you? Transfer it? No, I said simply. The pause. What do you mean no? It's due. We need it. I'm sure you do. So, are you going to send it? Her tone shifted now, uncertain, like she was trying to figure out if I was joking or if something had changed in the game we'd been playing, except it had never been a game to me. It had been love. And love, I was learning, needed boundaries. No, I repeated, my voice steady. I'm not going to send it. Why not? The question came out sharp, accusatory, as if I was the one behaving unreasonably. Why not? She actually had the audacity to ask why not. Melissa, I said, keeping my tone even, last Saturday you told me your wedding was just for special people. Do you remember saying that? Silence on the other end. But I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. You looked at me, the woman who's been paying a third of your rent for 3 years, and told me I wasn't special enough to watch my only son get married. You stood in your doorway, wearing a wedding ring I didn't even know existed, and made it clear where I ranked in your life. That's not, You're taking it the wrong way, she started, but I kept going. So I thought about it this week. Really thought about it. And I realized you're right. I'm not special. I'm just the woman who helped furnish your apartment. Who covered your rent when times were tight. Who made you curtains and brought you meals and welcomed you into my family like you were my own daughter. But clearly, that didn't make me special enough. This is ridiculous, Melissa said, her voice rising. We needed a small wedding. It wasn't personal. Everything is personal, child. Especially family. Especially mothers. Especially 28 years of sacrifice and love. So what, you're punishing us? You're going to let us get evicted because your feelings got hurt. The word, punishing, almost made me laugh. As if setting a boundary was punishment. As if refusing to be used was some kind of attack. I'm not punishing anyone, I said quietly. I'm simply doing what you taught me to do. I'm being selective. See, I've decided I'm only helping special people now. And apparently, Melissa, I'm not special enough for you, which means you're not special enough for me. Fair is fair. This is insane. You can't just, Jacob. She pulled away from the phone, and I heard her calling for my son. Jacob, your mother's lost her mind. There was fumbling, voices in the background, and then Jacob's voice came on the line. Mom. My heart clenched at the sound of him. Even now, even after everything, hearing my baby's voice made something in me ache. But I'd learned that love without respect was just another word for dormant. Hi, sweetheart, I said, and I meant the endearment despite everything. You don't stop loving your children just because they break your heart. You just learn to love them differently. Mom, what's going on? Melissa says you're refusing to help with rent. That's right. But why? We need that money. The landlord is serious about the late fees and we don't have. Jacob, I interrupted gently, do you remember what your wife said to me last Saturday? Silence. Do you remember standing there, saying nothing, while she told me your wedding was just for special people? Do you remember watching me pick up those magazines from your doorstep, seeing how much that hurt me, and still saying nothing? Mom, I'm sorry about that. I really am. But we were stressed about the wedding, and it just happened so fast and... Stop. The word came out harder than I intended. Just stop with the excuses, Jacob. You're 28 years old. You made a choice. You chose to get married without telling me. You chose to stand there while your wife made it clear I wasn't valued. You chose her comfort over my dignity. Those were your choices and I respect them. I do. But choices have consequences. So you're just going to abandon us? His voice cracked, and I heard the boy he used to be underneath the man he'd become. After everything, you're going to turn your back on us when we need you? The irony of those words, the sheer, breathtaking irony, hung in the air like smoke. Baby, I said softly, I'm not turning my back on you. I'm turning my face toward myself for once. There's a difference. You need to figure this out on your own. You're married now. You're an adult. It's time you learned what I learned a long time ago. The world doesn't owe you comfort just because you want it. Mom, please. I love you, Jacob. I always will. But I can't keep setting myself on fire to keep you warm. Not anymore. Especially not when you've made it clear that my warmth isn't valued. I hung up before he could respond, before the tears in his voice could undo my resolve. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. But underneath the trembling, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, solid ground beneath my feet. The phone rang again immediately. Then again. Then again. I turned it off and sat in the growing darkness of my living room, listening to the sound of my own breathing, feeling the weight of my decision settle into my bones. Outside, the world continued. Mrs. Chun finished watering her roses. A dog barked somewhere down the street. Life went on, indifferent to small human dramas. But in my quiet house, in my peaceful darkness, something had shifted irrevocably. What I didn't know yet, child, was just how desperate they would become. Or how much they were about to learn about taking people for granted. That lesson was coming soon. Very soon indeed. They say desperate times reveal true character. I'd always believed that, but I'd never expected to see it proven by my own son. The calls and texts started that very night and didn't stop for 3 days straight. First from Melissa, angry and accusatory. Then from Jacob, alternating between pleading and indignation. Then both of them together, their voices overlapping on speakerphone, creating a chorus of entitlement I barely recognized. I didn't answer. Not once. On the 4th day, they showed up at my door. It was early morning, barely past 7. I was still in my robe, coffee cup in hand, when the pounding started. Not knocking, pounding. The kind of aggressive banging that makes neighbors peek through their curtains. I opened the door to find them on my porch, and child, the sight nearly broke me. Jacob looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his shirt wrinkled like he'd slept in it. Melissa stood beside him, her polished exterior cracked, mascara smudged, designer purse clutched against her chest like a shield. "Mom, we need to talk," Jacob said, his voice hoarse. I stood in the doorway, not inviting them in. Sometimes love means holding your ground. "So talk. Can we come inside?" Melissa asked, glancing at Mrs. Chen's house across the street. "No." The word landed between us like a stone. Jacob flinched. Melissa's mouth fell open slightly. "No," she repeated as if she'd misheard. "You heard me. Say what you came to say from right there." Jacob ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from his childhood when he was anxious or cornered. "Mom, please. We're in serious trouble. The landlord filed for eviction yesterday. We have 48 hours to pay rent plus late fees, or we're out. We need $1,500. Then you'd better figure out where to get it." "We don't have it." Melissa's voice rose, shrill with panic. "We've been counting on your help. We budget based on your contribution. You can't just pull the rug out from under us like this." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the bitter warmth ground me. "Actually, Melissa, I can. Because that money was never an obligation. It was a gift. A choice I made out of love. And love, I've learned, requires respect. Mutual respect. Not just taking and taking while giving nothing back." "We give you plenty," she snapped. "We visit, we call. You visit when you need something. You call when you want money. When was the last time either of you asked how I was doing? When was the last time you invited me to dinner, not because I was bringing groceries, but just because you wanted my company?" Silence. The kind that answers questions without words. Jacob shifted his weight, looking down at his feet. "Mom, I know we messed up with the wedding. I know that hurt you. And I'm sorry. I really am. But we can't lose our apartment. We can't end up homeless because of one mistake." One mistake. I set my coffee cup down on the small table by my door. "Jacob, look at me." He raised his eyes, and I saw the boy I'd raised somewhere behind the man who'd disappointed me. It softened me slightly, but not enough to cave. "This isn't about one mistake," I said quietly. "This is about a pattern. 3 years of taking my help for granted. 3 years of accepting my money, my time, my love, and never once stopping to appreciate what it cost me. Do you know I've been eating rice and beans 4 nights a week so I could help with your rent? Do you know I've been putting off fixing my car, wearing shoes with worn-out soles, skipping my own medication sometimes?" Jacob's face paled. "Mom, I didn't know." "You didn't ask. That's the problem. You didn't ask because you didn't want to know. Because if you knew what I was sacrificing, you might feel obligated to refuse the help. And that would be uncomfortable, wouldn't it?" Melissa crossed her arms, defensive. "We never asked you to sacrifice. That was your choice." "You're right," I agreed. "It was my choice. Just like getting married without me was your choice. Just like treating me as not special enough was your choice. And now, not helping you anymore is my choice. See how that works?" "This is cruel," Melissa said, her voice trembling with anger. "You're being deliberately cruel to punish us for hurting your feelings." I looked at her, really looked at her, this woman my son had chosen over his own mother. And I felt, surprisingly, a wave of pity. She genuinely didn't understand. In her world, people existed to serve her purposes. Money flowed when she needed it. Doors opened because she was pretty and poised and persistent. She'd never learned the hard lessons life had taught me. "No, dear," I said gently. I'm being kind. I'm being kind to myself, which is something I should have done years ago. And I'm teaching you both something your lives desperately need to learn. Nobody owes you comfort. Nobody owes you rescue. Nobody owes you anything just because you want it. But you're my mother, Jacob said, his voice breaking. Mothers don't just abandon their children. That word, abandon, hit me like a physical blow. I stepped forward, and both of them actually backed up slightly. Abandon? I repeated, my voice low and sharp. I raised you alone. I worked myself to exhaustion so you'd never go hungry. I sacrificed relationships, opportunities, my own dreams, all for you. I gave you everything I had, Jacob. Everything. And when you needed help as an adult, I continued giving, even when it hurt me. But the moment I set a boundary, the moment I say, no more, you call it abandonment. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and unexpected. You abandoned me, baby. You abandoned me at your wedding. You abandoned me every time you let her disrespect me. You abandoned me every time you took my money without a thank you, without asking if I could afford it, without considering that I'm a person with needs and feelings too. Jacob was crying now too, ugly sobs that shook his shoulders. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. Please help us. I don't know what else to do. My heart was breaking watching him break. Every maternal instinct I had screamed at me to give in, to fix it, to make his pain stop. But underneath that instinct was something stronger, self-respect. Hard-won, long overdue self-respect. Jacob, I said, my voice steadier now, I love you more than my own life. But I cannot help you this time. You need to figure this out on your own. Call your father-in-law. Get a loan. Pick up extra shifts. Sell some of those designer things Melissa likes so much. But learn to solve your own problems without expecting me to rescue you. My father won't help, Melissa said quickly, desperately. He and I aren't speaking right now. Of course they weren't. I wondered what she'd done to burn that bridge. Then you have 2 days to get creative, I said. I suggest you start now. I stepped back and closed my door. Not slammed, closed. Gently but firmly, the way you close a chapter in a book you finished reading. Through the door, I heard Melissa's voice, sharp and accusing, "This is your fault. I told you we shouldn't have done it that way. I told you she'd be hurt." So she had known. She'd known it would hurt me and suggested it anyway. Or maybe she'd known and Jacob had overruled her. Either way, the truth was out now. Their voices faded as they left my porch. I walked to my window and watched them get into their car, the nice car with payments I'd helped with more than once. They sat there for several minutes, arguing, gesturing, clearly at a loss for what to do next. Then they drove away. I stood in my quiet house, in my worn robe, with my cold coffee, and I felt free. Said yes. Heartbroken in ways I'd need time to process. But underneath all that pain was something solid and true. I had chosen myself. Finally, after a lifetime of choosing everyone else first, I had chosen myself. The phone rang that evening. Jacob's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then Melissa called. Voicemail again. They called 6 more times that night, leaving increasingly desperate messages. I listened to none of them. What happened next, child? Well, that's when life really started teaching them lessons I couldn't have planned if I tried. Thank you for sitting with me through this story, dear. If Grandma Alice's wisdom touched your heart today, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to keep these stories alive. Every tale here carries truth about boundaries, respect, and remembering your own worth. Hit that like button if this resonated with you, and share it with someone who needs to hear that saying no isn't cruel. It's sometimes the kindest thing we can do. More stories are coming, and I promise you, child, life always teaches what we refuse to learn.